Hey, sports card fans, it's John Wade Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. I don't have any cards to show off in this video, but I wanted to talk about something that I noticed I tend to do a lot in my videos, especially ones where I'm showing a card that I've recently picked up, and something that I've noticed a lot of other sports card related channels don't talk about on their videos, and that's the subject of money or how much I've paid for a particular card. So I wanted to do a quick video here to sort of explain why I do that. It's not because I've gotten some negative feedback in some comments when I do it, but I just thought it was important for me to do a video and explain why I do that compared to others that may not. And I fully understand why a lot of the channels don't talk about how much they spend on a particular card. It's private, no one else's business. They just don't feel comfortable talking about how much they spend on their cards, which is fine. But I tend to do it for a couple different reasons. But first off, it's definitely not to flex. I consider myself having a very small hobby budget. I wish I had more to spend on cards, but my current finances just don't allow for that. Maybe that'll change in the future, but for now, I have a limited hobby budget, and my goal is to stretch whatever available funds I have as thin as possible to get as many cards to add to my collection as possible. So I talk about how much I spend on a card for a couple reasons. One, it's to give you some insight and background on my thoughts and processes of choosing a card, why I picked a particular card, maybe why I put in a maximum bid on a certain auction. And it's to show that my goal is to get cards from my collection that have really nice eye appeal, but spend as little as possible for those cards. And I think it's helpful, at least I hope it's helpful, for those that are watching my videos, not just to see the card that I've picked up, but also, how much I paid for it in terms of what the card is selling for in general. I talk a lot about comps and different things. I try to stay away as much as I can from the number grade, but that factors into the price range that I look for a card. I know in some cases I can't afford a PSA 7, but maybe a PSA 4 or 5 is in my current budget, so I use the number grade as a guideline to search for cards, and then I try to find the best deal for a card in that particular number grade. So, I do try to buy the card, not the grade, but the grade is a sort of guidepost to which cards I can look at to potentially pick up. And especially with the cards that I pick up for my 100 cards for $100,000 list, and my 100 cards for $10,000 list. While I put those lists together with a total price in mind, 100,000 and 10,000, my goal is certainly not to spend that amount of money. So that's why when I show off one of the cards I pick up from either of those lists, not only how I did for that particular card in that grade versus what other copies are selling for, but how I'm doing in regards to the total cost I think I may have to spend to acquire those cards. Because again, my goal is to spend as much less as possible from that $100,000 or $10,000. So that's why I talk about, or spend as much time as I do, talking about how much I spend for a card, and maybe how much I saved from what I thought I would have to spend, or talk about if I got a good deal on a card or not. And so I think that's important to talk about in my videos as well. And finally, I think that the second reason, other than maybe some educational aspect of talking about how much I spent for a card, is that I want everyone out there who watches my videos to know that regardless of your budget, you can have a great collection that you enjoy, and you don't have to spend a lot of money to do it. I haven't done the calculations, but I wouldn't be surprised if the average price I paid for my vintage collection is probably around 50 bucks. Occasionally, like the National, I have an opportunity to buy some more expensive cards, but I save for an entire year for the National. The next paycheck after the National, I start saving for next year's National. So I put a little money aside, and over a year's time, I have a decent amount of money to be able to spend on cards at the National, which is pretty much the only time I can even think about spending several $100s on a card, or even $1,000 or more on a card, is because I've saved up over an entire year to have that amount of money. And so I'm very proud of the collection that I have built. And it's not just my vintage collection. I had the same methodology with my Wade Boggs collection. I never wanted to overpay for a Wade Boggs card. And I looked at comps and what other copies are selling for, and my goal was to buy a card for the cheapest that any other copy recently sold for. And again, to stretch my hobby budget. I didn't build my Wade Boggs collection with tons of money in the bank that I just spent and built this. My Wade Boggs collection is something that has built over a 25-year period. So I certainly, now there were some cards early on that I spent some good amount of money on, and ones that I probably overspent. I was one of those ones that at one point in time, I spent more than my budget should have allowed. And I paid for that. It took me several years to get out from that. And since then, I am extremely budget conscious. I do not pay for a card that I don't have the money for. And so all that plays into my thought process, my methodology on how I look at a card, how I decide what cards to buy, and how much I decide to spend on a card. So I hope this is helpful. Again, I'm not doing this because I've gotten some pushback on, in comments on some of my videos of, why do you keep talking about price, and I don't care about price, and just show the card, and that. It's not a reaction to any negative comments, but I thought about it the other day when I was doing one of my 100 cards for $100,000, that, man, I always talk about how much I spend on a card, and I notice a lot of the other channels don't. Again, I understand why, and this isn't a suggestion for other channels to start doing that. I understand it's a private matter for most, and you just don't feel comfortable in saying how much you spend on a particular card. That's perfectly fine. But I hope you understand my reasoning for doing that. It's not to show off, not to showboat, because certainly if you've watched my videos, you know I don't spend a lot of money on my cards. The only time I really have a chance to do that is at the National. That's sort of my playtime, hey, I saved up an entire year for this, so now I'm going to, maybe buy some more expensive cards because I have that money. But usually it's a shoestring budget, and I'm looking to pick up cards as cheap as possible. So with all that, would love to know in the comments what you think about me talking about the price I paid for a card, how that matches with my budget, or one of the 100 card lists, how that matches up with what I thought I would have to spend for a card, all that stuff. Would love to know what you think, whether it's helpful, educational, or whether you don't really care about it. Would love to know either way. And with that, that's all I have for you. So until next time, thanks for watching.